People of Reddit who have been denied when they proposed, why did it happen and what was the end result? I proposed after dating my girlfriend for 2 years. I was about to graduate college and move away, and she was a year behind me. I had the ring, everything perfectly planned, we discussed our future together. When I proposed, she initially said yes. About half an hour later, she seemed off. I asked her if anything was wrong, and she said she needed to think. We talked for a while, and then she changed her answer. She said we were too young, she wanted to be on her own for a while, to be independent, etc. Joke's on her though, because now we're married. Edit, okay, didn't expect this much attention. To explain, yes, we are married to each other, and she does know. We stayed together afterward and another year later I proposed again, that time with a longer lasting success. I just thought, if Turk from Scrubs, an incredibly immature, selfish guy can endure being rejected multiple times by the woman he loves, then I think I can at least maintain the same level of persistence in reality. Edit 2, for some added embarrassment, I proposed on day 2 of a 5-day trip we were on together. That, in retrospect, was poor planning. Trip was fun though. 8 years ago. It's been 8 years. We had known each other for 5 years, dated for 3.5. Every single day I saw her was the best day of my life. We met while working at a pizza chain and had gotten close at work. I eventually worked up the courage to ask her out, even though it was awfully frowned upon as she was a driver and I was a manager. She said yes and we went to a party together and literally didn't talk to a single other soul that night. I was hooked. We dated for a year and then moved in together. I can still see her face perfectly, even that long ago. Her family was wonderful, her father an esteemed professor at a nearby college and her mother was a cancer survivor with a heart of gold. Everything just seemed to fit. And I knew that I wanted to be with her forever. After dating for 3 years, I finally popped the question. I had set up a normal night in, ordered a pizza and had a nice little night in. We had a cat, Triumph, a nice little apartment, the whole shebang. I had tied a little pillow with the ring on to try and sat her in the other room while my lady was in the bathroom. When she got back, I called for the cat and she came in, pillow and all on her back. I proposed and she burst into tears, saying she was sorry and ran out of the apartment. I tried desperately to reach her, through family, friends, any way imaginable. I finally heard back from her sister after 3 days. Her entire family knew and I was the only person out of the loop. She was diagnosed with a very aggressive terminal brain cancer, just 3 days prior to me proposing. I was gutted. For so many reasons, but I could understand why she didn't tell me. After I had proposed, she told her sister that she had decided not to put me through that but I didn't care. I would have stayed with her to the end of the earth. I tried night and day to contact her to no avail. She died just 5 weeks after I had proposed. I have never felt more lost and alone than I did at her funeral. Her family were very comforting but I began to hate myself. Thinking that it was something that I had done to scare her away, making her believe that I would leave her if she told me when it couldn't have been further from the truth. I went into a deep depression for a very long time afterwards. I drank and did drugs, day and night. Went from job to job, not showing up for days on end. I dropped out of school, lost a lot of my friends. Considered ending my life a few times. I know now that she kept it from me to try and save me the grief of losing her. But there's nothing in the world I wouldn't give to go back in time. Just to hear her say yes. Edit, all these kind words and all of you sharing your stories are really warming my heart. Thank you Reddit, the world is truly full of beautiful people. My dad proposed to my mom after they'd been seeing each other for just under 2 weeks. She laughed and basically told him he was crazy, that it was way too soon. My dad said, and he is very proud of this fact, fine. I asked you once. I'm not gonna ask again. My mom thought he was bluffing. After a year of dating she started giving him a hard time about not asking her to get married again, and he stuck to his guns and said she missed her chance and he wasn't going to ask again. My mom finally broke down and asked him to marry her. Made sure she properly took the piss out of him when she did it, too. Made a big show about asking his father for permission, got down on one knee in public, got him the gaudiest engagement ring she could find. He said yes, and they just celebrated their 30th anniversary. Edit: I guess I could have done a better job of conveying the spirit of my dad's initial proposal, because some people seem to think it was a serious thing where he actually got down on one knee, but it wasn't anything like that. My mom and dad were planning their next date, trying to figure out if they could go do anything after he got off of work, and he said, "Hey, I know. We could go get married." He was serious, but he framed it as a joke because he knew it was insane. She thought he was joking but kind of suspected he wasn't, asked him if he was crazy in the very loud, hard to be offended by it way she has, said it's too soon but, feel free to ask again later. My dad kept up his joking tone when he said he wouldn't ask again, hence why my mom thought he was just kidding when he wouldn't ask again. It wasn't at all framed like an ultimatum, but he really enjoyed reminding my mom of the fact that he'd already asked her to marry him whenever she nagged him about when he was going to get around to proposing. I'm the denier. I'd been dating this girl for 6 months, and it was going pretty well. We hardly ever fought, but when we did it was hard for us to get back to normal. At a good point, she said, I feel like I should pop the question. I have absolutely no poker face, and she instantly saw that I wasn't on board. As a child of the 80s, all of my friends had parents who'd divorced, and I'd made an oath to myself that I was just going to be married once. I liked this girl a lot, but I wasn't convinced yet that what we had was going to last forever. So, we stayed together, went to couples counseling, and learned how to fight. It sounds strange, but I can't tell you how effective it was. We learned that my conflict pattern is to constantly work on a problem until it's solved, where her pattern is to blow off steam over time. The result was that I would keep conversations going when we fought, and would basically chase her around, keeping her mad and blocking her attempts at breaking off to cool down. I learned to just let her be mad, and check back in later, and she learned to say, I just need to be by myself for a bit. It worked. Our good relationship with rough fights turned into great relationship with mature, low-drama fights. Conflicts that used to hang a dark cloud over the house for days were now resolved in hours. At that point I felt comfortable enough to say yes to a year-long engagement. And we've now been married 18 years, have supported each other through thick and thin, and are raising 2 awesome kids. The only regret I have is that we ended up without a proposal story, as it was effectively negotiated over time. I did get on my knee and present a ring at a fancy dinner, but even then it was a ring we'd picked out together, as she was a jewelry smith. Edit: awkward grammar. Proposed to girlfriend after she got off work on a Monday with her favorite meal prepared, and the apartment all lit with candles, rose petals on the floor after having had a special weekend together. She is shy and promised violence if proposed to in public. She said no. When I asked her to marry me as she came in the door to our apartment. She worked in the medical field and had puke all over her. She showered and said yes. And on her worst days, she will remember that you love her enough to marry her covered in puke. My wife had a terrible head cold, like snot dripping from her nose. She was upset about stuff at work and was crying. She's one of those women that gets really emotional on their period. Did I mention she was on her period? Right, that too. To top it all off, she tripped while trying to get up, stubbed her pinky toe and fell flat on her butt on the floor whilst holding her foot. So she's sick, injured, crying, and both angry and upset at the same time. I sat down on the floor next to her and said, that does it. I've officially seen you at your worst and I don't care. Will you marry me? Took her about 10 minutes to respond, but we were married a year last June and will have been together 5 years this February. Same guy proposed to me 5 times. I finally agreed, and the day before we were supposed to get married, I got horrible diarrhea. I still try not to even fart in front of him. I was mortified. He sweetly sat in the living room playing music while everything I'd ever eaten in my whole life came pouring out of me at Mach 5. It was so rotten that it made me cry. Now I don't usually subscribe to the whole if you can't handle me at my worst mantra, so I was well prepared for him to pack his bags and surrender me and the apartment to the bacteria in my gut that had so clearly taken charge of our lives. He married me anyway, that sucker. Start to a marriage, but he's mine now XD.